The research on trust was originally really has been done on interpersonal relationships. Over the last, I would say, 15 years, there has been a growing interest in applying these ideas, which were really about people, to organizations and understanding the connection of how trust may occur between organizations and what might be the antecedents of that as well as the consequences of that. And I think it's been a very promising area, both theoretically as well as empirically, and also has managerial implications. However, I think there are a number of areas for research that still remain over here. So for instance, I would say to you is that we don't really understand. We have basically taken the ideas that were done to study people and just said, okay, that applies to organizations. We haven't fully unpacked and developed a theory of what does trust between organizations mean, how is it created, and what might be the implications of that. We, including myself, have used data in areas that roughly gives you some way to create some indication of trust, but it's not really sure, am I capturing it, and what are the meaning of it. I would say another hugely important area is in the area of understanding managerial implications of this. So what? What can I teach managers about how to be more trustworthy, how to build trust with other partners, and how to then develop this as a capability that I can translate for many of my collaborations. I think it's hugely important today because companies are collaborating at a much faster rate than they ever did before. And so trust is central, but I think there's a lot of opportunity still for sharpening our theory on both what it means, how you get it, and what are the implications of it. I started to study organizations in turbulent times in 1999. And for lack of any excuse, I dragged out that study till 2009. The advantage of procrastination was I had an amazing study, I felt, of 8 companies that I began tracking from 1999 all the way through 2009, meaning 2 recessions and a boom in between, across very different industries. So it was a longitudinal study. And I will share with you one simple statistic which tells me there was something. I was looking at companies that are doing interesting things to respond to the 1999 recession, but more broadly to turbulent markets. And I think the findings are interesting because it's not a study of recessions only. It's a study of turbulence in markets today. Because if you look at business markets today, turbulence is here to stay. Even now, they say the recession is over, but turbulence is not. Turbulence is about uncertainty. Uncertainty is a situation where you cannot really even imagine what the outcome might be. It's not risk. So it's a different environment. And I have tried to look at companies over a decade. So to tell you the data, these 8 companies, and I did not pick their stocks, nor did I buy their stocks. These 8 companies in the last decade have had a shareholder return of 135%. While if you bought shares in the S&P 500 aggregate, you would have received a return of almost nothing, 0. And if you look at their sales growth in this 10-year period, they have grown their sales 233%, while the S&P has grown 10%. So something these companies have done over a decade is what the question mark is. And how have they tackled resilience? What makes them resilient? How are they able to tackle downtimes and uptimes? So in the book, I unpack the idea that one of the key hallmarks of these companies is they make customers the center of their activities. And it's not just an intellectual exercise that I do segmentation work or I do any kind of work like that. It's actually then the bulk of the book is really about the implementation. It's easy to segment and do focus groups and market research. How do you translate ideas that you may have about your customers into action? And the problem here is most companies are still organized in, I would say, to solve 20th century problems. They're organized as production and distribution systems. They optimize to produce and distribute. Whereas if you look at the marketplace today, with customers who have more information and more choices and are more demanding, and in an economic turbulent environment are much more price sensitive, it's very hard to compete if you don't understand your customers. And so the central prism through which they look at the market, look at their resource allocation, look at their decisions, is all through the lens of what drives value to my customers. And it's not also passive listening to customers. It's not saying I will do whatever my customers want. It's about trying to really internalize and understand what might be going on in the customer's life. They may not be able to articulate even what is it they want. So it's the ability to comprehend what others may not comprehend, and from there enact change in your organization. And I describe that this is not an on-off switch. There are really 4 levels through which companies go to get to this point. And I articulate what exactly this entails. And I think it's very important. A big hallmark internally is connecting the silos that exist inside organizations. How do you build trust between the silos? How do you get them to cooperate with each other? Because inside organizations, the divisions that exist by virtue of the organizational structures create schisms, gaps. And it's very hard to bridge those schisms because people work autonomously, they may compete for resources. How do you gain collaboration among these disparate people? That is absolutely critical for these companies to be aligned around customers, which in turn allows them to be resilient in turbulent times. That's really the central thesis.